Welcome back, everyone, to our Monday interview show. I am so excited for our very special guest today. Her name is Gabrielle Anwar, and she is an acclaimed actress with over 45 film and television performances, including Scent of a Woman, which was a favorite film in my family. And she is an advocate for learning how to live with mental health. Such as bipolar disorder and PTSD. She recently spoke out about her own struggles in Patrick Kennedy's recent book, Profiles in Mental Health Courage. Gabrielle also is on the board of Pickler USA. She talks about early childhood care, which is, of course, a personal interest of mine. And she is so into holistic wellness, as we'll talk about today, promoting body positivity, self acceptance. It goes on and on. Gabrielle, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure, Kimberly. Thank you for having me.
You know, there's so many things I want to talk about in here, but one of the things that stood out to me when I first learned about you was how our society focuses so much on, um, just the physicality and what we think is success. Oh, you're famous or you're on TV and movies. Your life must be so easy, right? But one of the things that we don't know with anyone and with all of us are the complexities, what's going on mentally, emotionally, these parts of us that we don't see. So, can you share a little bit now as an advocate? Can you share a little bit about, why you're so passionate about this cause? When you start, you've been in so many different films and movies. I imagine from very early age, when you started realizing that there was something going on, and how that was exacerbated by the fame that so many people are thinking is going to solve their problems, and having so many people watch you, right? There's an intensity to that, isn't there?
I think I'm very disconnected from the work and the aftermath. So
Mm,
I don't often think about the reception of the work that I'm doing. I just do the work. And I think that was partly because I was so manic when I was
mm,
playing a role. It really usurped all that energy that I had that was overwhelming to me. So it was an incredible channel to create something out of that very bipolar intensity.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that had I not had that, I would have derailed into the abyss and probably wouldn't still be here. I mean, I was struggling tremendously throughout most of my young adulthood, even in my teens. So fortunately, I had an acting career at 15, which really did keep me above sinking.
And then how common are these sort of these challenges, like bipolar, for example? Because sometimes you hear about it, but it's hard to get accurate statistics. And do you think many people are struggling and not really sharing about it or getting the help that they need?
Well, I often joke that I think all women are bipolar when they're PMSing.
Yeah, the
So I think
hormonal ups and
there are
downs. That's
there are a
true.
lot of us out there. There are a lot more than we care to think. But I do think there's a very strong correlation between the endocrine system and the psychology of a person, which I don't think gets explored as much as it ought to in the medical field. But I do think, I think that a lot of creative people struggle with mental health and often self medicate either through their art or through addictions. I mean, we hear through history of so many
Yes.
artists that really were mentally ill. That's not to say other strains of expression aren't as stress inducing, but I do think that there is a lot of mental health that's untreated out there.
Was your treatment, and currently, right, it goes on long term, does it involve, like, can you share with us how you're able to ameliorate symptoms or find a sense of relief, or what has really helped you on your
Right.
journey?
Well, as you mentioned, I was a holistic practitioner. I wouldn't take an Advil, haven't had a Coca-Cola ever, and was very, very focused on health and well-being. So I really shunned pharmaceuticals for very many years and thought that if I just took the right workshop, or if I just met the right guru, or if I just traveled to the right location, that I would find healing. And I did that erroneously for so many years that it wasn't until I met my husband who gave me an ultimatum. And he said, either you talk to a psychiatrist and I'll find you the best one, because I would always poo-poo whoever was brought up to me, and we'll go from there. And in order to not lose the relationship, I succumbed to psychotherapy with a shrink, which was very different than psychotherapy with a therapist. And even though I had seen many therapists and psychiatrists over the years, this was a no-nonsense psychiatrist that I couldn't manipulate with my standard charm and convincing ways. So it was very successful in exploring medications. And this has been 14 years now since I started with the right medications. I had been misdiagnosed and given the wrong medications for many years, but this was working. So it's tedious because you're impatient to get to where you need to be to feel like you're functioning normally. So I was very impatient and very disrespectful of the pharmaceutical world, and felt that with every medication there was a side effect which required another medication, and then there was a side effect to that medication, and so it went on. So now I'm taking a significant amount of medication which goes against my holistic beliefs, but I'm balanced and safe and stable for the first time in my life. So I have to prioritize which is the most important to me, to practice yoga with a clear head, or to be balanced and safe as a mother and as a wife and as a daughter and a sister and a friend.
Yes, I think that's such a powerful message, because sometimes in our society it's like all or nothing, like this is bad, this is good, whether you're talking about the dieting wars, or all this, all that. And I think it's so important to hear the story of, hey, I tried it this way and I wasn't getting where I wanted to go, and so I opened up to this, and there's this fulfillment and this balance in your life and your overall health, which I think is a really
Yeah,
important message, right?
yeah,
Because maybe certain meds do, things to your gut health, maybe you take SPO probiotics or other things to balance. But when we're thinking about the holistic beings that we are, these layers, these complexities, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, we're looking at the total picture.
right, right. And it's the only thing that's been successful to me. So I really can't afford to mess with it or question it even.
Well, and right? You can have medication to get bipolar under control, and you can also strive to eat a healthy diet. For anyone that's struggling, you can, strive to have good sleep hygiene and exercise. You can do all these other aspects of the lifestyle. It doesn't cancel it out. It's just,
No,
for
it doesn't.
some, it adds. Yeah.
Right. As long as I'm not so polarized that I don't believe that. But what you say is very wise. And I've come to appreciate that more and more the older I get. And now that I've just become a grandmother, I want to be very present and safe for my granddaughter. And I wasn't in that space with my firstborn child at all. And I owe it to her, for her own child, that I be more consistent.
When you say safe, Gabrielle, what do you mean by that? Like you
Well,
might.
when I was raising Willow, my firstborn child who just turned 30, actually she's about to turn 31. Where has this year gone? But that's another story. But I was very inconsistent with her. I would have bouts of mania where I would be extremely energized, enthusiastic, and overwhelming to a small child. I mean, I would do a
Mm,
fun project, like I would slip cover the trampoline with my sewing machine, which is a Herculean task to do, and I would do it in one day. And I thought that I would be impressing her. Look what mummy can do. Isn't this beautiful? The trampoline was bright blue and yellow, and now it's shabby chic. So I thought that I was very exciting and adventuresome, but it it made my daughter feel on edge, because following a manic cycle, there would be a depression where I would be in my
Mm,
pajamas for 3 days, and I would say to her, Mummy's just very tired today, and I'm not going to slip cover the trampoline today because I already did that, and now I need to rest. So there was no consistency. There was not a mother who was like, here's your mac and cheese and a protein on the table at 6 p.m. every evening. That was not my MO.
right.
So now I'm trying to be more uh, uh, reliable,
Yeah, steady.
steady. Yes, steady. And that wasn't attractive to me. Monotony was the devil, and I would even take a different route to school to drop her off in the mornings so that I would avoid the monotony of stopping at that same light at that same corner. I was constantly looking for an energy that made me feel turned on to life.
Outside of yourself, like a stimulation outside.
Totally external seeking, which you'll never find.
You know what's so amazing about this? I just got goosebumps, Gabrielle. So my new book is about the heart, and it's about heart coherence. And one of the things I talk about in my personal story, and this isn't the path for everyone, but also clearly it was for you. For some, the householder path, where you find partnership. The partner can be that mirror that allows you to grow in ways. If you're left on your own, you may continue your patterns. You may, like you said, continue to manipulate. Not for everyone, right? For some people, they get to a point within themselves. But I can say for me as well, just having certain patterns of behavior. And when there was such a strong love with my husband, and it made me see shadows, like abandonment issues that I had from my childhood that I didn't really know were there, right? And it came up, and because the love was so strong, it's that choice you make. Like you said, you can either rise up in yourself, or you lose this most
Yes.
incredible precious relationship. And
Yes.
so it can be such a powerful way to grow. And I went on your Instagram and I saw, some beautiful renewing your vows with your husband, and just this really, aliveness in your relationship. So it's just, I just wanted to, congratulate you,
Yes.
and also
Thank
point out
you.
that for some, it is that mirror, which could be a partner, maybe it's like a sister or parent or friend, that can help us see. Because when we're in the dark heart, as it's called, incoherence, heart and brain aren't really speaking, we don't really see ourselves.
No, you're absolutely right. And there's nothing more powerful than a relationship between a partnership between a couple that
Yes.
will reflect your inadequacies and your strengths. But if you're wanting to succeed, you have to focus on the inadequacies and work on that so that you don't lose what is so powerful and so healthy. I'm so grateful for my relationship with my husband. I I have grown so much in his reflection,
Mm.
and I just can't imagine being without this person in my life. I just can't. I mean, it's not perfect. Our relationship is far from perfect, and I make mistakes on a daily basis. But I know that I have a safe place, and he really is that masculine strength, that rock that doesn't waver, and I'm constantly undulating around him. I liken it to the stripper's pole. He's my pole, and I'm dancing a naked dance around him in all my glory. And that's what our roles are. It's very
Yeah.
much the yin and yang. And I know we
Yes.
all have the masculine and feminine in us, so it doesn't have to be opposite sex relationships, but it's playing with that yin yang energy that creates something so vital between two people.
I agree. It's the divine masculine, the divine feminine. And in my relationship as well, my husband's like very masculine and I'm very feminine. And it's that stability. And like you said, that dance, that play of life, yoga would call it Shiva Shakti, right? The
Yes.
creativity and the stableness. But the
And
third
and
heart,
when I sorry to interrupt, Kimberly, when I
oh,
met my husband, I very much wore the pants. I was a single mother. I brought home the bacon, and I wasn't in my feminine. I was such an ardent feminist. I didn't know that you could be feminist and still remain feminine. And I learned so much from I continue to learn so much from my relationship with my husband. He'll say to me often, "Where's the battle? You know, you can calm down, just be quiet, stop raging at me, and just let's just take a moment here. There is no war." And I'm
Right.
constantly on guard. And I think that comes from being a single parent and being both the masculine and feminine in the relationship with your children. So that's a new stance for me, is really softening and allowing my husband to be male and do male things that I would have shunned many years ago, and said, I'm just as important as you, and don't you tell me that, and don't tell me not to have another drink. I'll punch you in the face. You know, it was very much like this very tumultuous dance for power. And now I'm
Yeah.
like, I have no interest in that power. I have interest in power in other realms of the world, like my nonprofit, for example. I want to be in control. I'm happy being the CEO. I love that power. But within the dance between the masculine and feminine, I've relinquished all of it. And I'm
Mm.
so much happier. I'm so much happier. And I can put my pants on when I need to, but I'm quite happy to take them off.
Well, I love this, Gabrielle. You know, this word power is really interesting to me. I used it in my third book, which is called The Beauty Detox Power. It's in this recent book, which just came out, called The Hidden Power of the Five Hearts. So now I'm thinking of power to be, as you describe, in our true self, in our essence, in our kindness, in our lovingness, in the softness, where we don't give our power, we don't give our peace away. Right. If I'm
Yes.
powerful and steady in me, I don't need you to see me in a certain way. I don't need to fight all the time to be right or to get this or this. There's a real power in just being, like you said, instead of constantly trying
Yes.
to, make it be this way or push down. And there's a lot of energy in that and vitality. And I imagine that's also really healthy for your mental health challenges and all around in your life.
Yeah, it's key. It's really key to have that stability, and to not take it lightly, to really respect that, and to own that internal power as a woman
Yes.
is very new for me, actually. I had a very insistent way of being in the world, which was, I have a tool collection that would rival any man's tools. And I have a tool belt, and I have the worn in leather gloves, and I recently said, you know what? I'm quite happy to have somebody else do the grouting in the bathroom tiles now. I don't have to prove to my children or to anyone that I am capable of doing everything on planet Earth myself. I'm going to actually relinquish this control of this situation, and I'm going to hand it over to somebody who's much, much better than I am at it. And they can grout the tiles in the bathroom, and they can do a great job, and I will just oversee it and be very grateful for the person who's doing the work.
Mm.
So that applies to everything in my life.
Well, it sounds like a real shift from survival mode, me against the world. I have to make it all happen, into thriving. And were these some of the stories, or can you share a little bit about what you shared in Patrick Kennedy's book, Profiles in Mental Health Courage?
Yeah, so when I met Patrick and Stephen, the co-authors of the book, I was very ripe to reveal my deep, dark truths. I think I'd been holding on to them for so long that they created a very safe platform to do this with the other contributors to the book. The other profiles in mental health courage were so brave and courageous with their telling of their story that I felt that I was in good company, and that the truth heals and secrets maim. And
Mm.
I'm done with secrets, and I have no shame around the story. I was a very difficult teen. I think I developed bipolar in my adolescence, and I think that again the endocrine system awakens hormonal baggage throughout our lives at any given moment. And I became very, very dichotomous. I was either very depressed, or very much alive. As I mentioned, when I was 15, I started working professionally as an actor in England. And I was so grateful to have that outlet for what I considered to be like I should be in the book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I was like, I don't even know what this is, but I should be locked up because I don't feel safe. I'm very aggressive, violent even, and I don't know how to control this. And I didn't know what bipolar was. I had heard of manic depression, but I really didn't liken it to my symptoms at all. So I was acting out in a variety of ways. I had a very difficult relationship with my mother, who I believe was undiagnosed bipolar. She was exhibiting depression and mania. So I was just in this environment that was just so unhealthy. And when I went away to shoot a movie or a TV show in that instance, I was like, oh, okay, so we're all a little weird. And this is a really creative outlet. And all these people are leaving home and on location in this place. And we all have each other. And I was just like, this rocks. This is a great environment to be unstable. And I'm going to learn this dialogue, and I'm going to act it out as a misunderstood teenager in this particular character. And it was a match made in heaven.
Until you realized it wasn't a permanent solution.
Well, it really wasn't until I had children that I realized that this is detrimental to everybody involved with my life. Like, I'm influencing everybody in my life, and this isn't working. And I don't know what to do about it, but it's not working.
Gabrielle, I love that you said you don't have shame about this, because I think that one of the most detrimental energies that we can take on is shame.
Yes.
I think a lot of we have shame different ways. One of the things that Swami Sri Yukteswar says, who is Yogananda's guru, who wrote Yoga to the West, who is such a big part of my recent book. So he's always top of mind for me. He wrote about these 5 heart stages from the Vedas. He talks about letting go of shame. And, I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, every person's life has so much shame. And until we really anchor in self, God, spirit, heart, however you want to think of it, until you really anchor yourself, there's going to be a lot of things that you could potentially feel shameful for. And then it just weighs you down in the present. It doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help, the energy now and what you want to bring forward and what you want to create. So we have to let the shame go. We have to,
Yes.
of course, learn and see and change patterns, but it doesn't help anything to hold on to that shame. And now you could speak to letting go of that, and now going forward and creating your nonprofit and putting energy. And then I'd like to talk about the children's work in a minute, but just letting go to move into something where you can be of service, where you can share your story, where you can bring issues to light, the power in that.
It's incredible. That kind of power is so good, and so good for the planet, and so good for everyone you come into contact with. It's a very different system of controlling a situation, or the lack of control in a situation. It's a beautiful place to reside, and I'm very happy to have found it. And I veer from that, and I feel shame occasionally, and then I just come back to that place, and I do feel that presence of the universe or the gods, or however you want to look at it. I feel close to that presence at that moment. And I feel like, okay, there's a big plan here. There's a really big plan here. And I'm just the hero in my own journey. So now I can take a step back and feel safe in this particular place and relinquish the shame again. It's a constant shedding.
Yeah, I was going to say, you feel it, you're aware of shame, and then you come back to center. Is it like that over and over again?
Yes, for me, yes, it is. For me, it is. I mean, I do a lot of praying during my day. I have a prayer that covers covers all the gods, that covers the universe, it covers the guides, the angels, the fairies. It's a very prolific prayer, but I do it every day to just ground myself and to just get on the right side of things. It's just a little reminder every day.
For me as well, Gabrielle, I pray as well. And for me, what's helped let go of my shame is praying that I can be of more service, right? Because when we're in shame, we're very self-focused. And even, you feel bad, but you're still focused on yourself. And then for me, it's realizing, well, maybe I would have shifted, wouldn't do that again or whatever, wouldn't yell at my mom or did things in the past. But here we are now. And if I focus on service and I can pray to be of more service, then I feel this expansion out. And it also helps me lift out of the shame because I'm not so focused on the little me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a very fine line between acknowledging shame and self-pity. And I think it's really important to veer on the side of, I'm not my past. I am the present, and I have the future to look forward to. So I have to, at some point, distinguish the two and cut myself off from the past because I can't change it. And if I dwell on it for years in therapy or for years out of therapy, I'm not going to get to where I need to be in life to have the best life that I can and to be of service. Whatever that looks like to you, you have to cut the past off and let it go at some point, because I spent years blaming my parents for everything, every little thing. And then when I became a parent, I was like, oh my God, they were doing the best they could. There really is no blame here. There's gratitude. There's gratitude for doing the very best you could. There weren't psychological tools back then. There were barely a diagnosis for illnesses, mental illnesses. My mother was prescribed tranquilizers for her manic depression. And so, we've come a long way in the last 50 years. So I'm very grateful to be on this end of the spectrum rather than back when my mother was trying to parent me from a place of dysfunction.
Well, and if we believe this, which as I do, the universal intelligence, that things are happening for our growth, right? Because we could all sit here and say, oh, well, my childhood was this or that and all the things in the past. So there is power in coming into the present, which for me is so much about coming into the heart, not just up in the head and the thoughts and the mind. It should have been this, or this was right and this was wrong, but to be here and then shift your energy into something else.
I do believe it's the only way to break generational patterns that are negative. I think it's the only way to shift that dynamic out of a family's origin and change the way you want to parent or you want to live. And it doesn't have to be the way you were parented and the way you lived in your family of origin.
So tell us, Gabrielle, a little bit about your nonprofit and how you've shifted out of all this past and where your energy and your passion is right now.
So when I was pregnant with my son and my daughter was 5 or 6, I met a child psychologist who was working with Willow because I thought I needed help with an expert for her to have somebody to speak to that wasn't her mother or father who was so struggling. So when I met this child psychologist, she mentioned a child rearing philosophy called Pickler after Dr. Emmy Pickler. And so I studied this approach and I used it religiously with Hugo so that I wouldn't create the same patterns that I had with Willow. And then I did it with my youngest daughter as well. So that was 23 years ago. And for 23 years, I've been trying to bring this approach to the United States, to a wide audience of young mothers and caregivers in daycare situations. So I, at the end of last year, launched Rethink Baby, which does just that. It brings the Pickler method into the 21st century and allows caregivers and mothers to learn what this methodology does to children, how it promotes high self-esteem and self-respect and respect of other, and builds confidence and builds a child that is very capable of love, of self-love and self-soothing, but also to love another. And I truly believe that if we can implement this practice in daycares and in homes throughout Miami currently, and then eventually throughout the country, and in my big dream, the world, then there will be world peace eventually. Not in my lifetime, but if we can start with babies from 0 to 3 years old, which is when they are so influenced by their external stimulus. If we could address those 3 years, which usually just are ignored before preschool and school begins, and this is a time when parents are exhausted and they're very new to this and they don't know what to do. There are no manuals, and every parenting book contradicts the next. It's like, should we be attaching? Should we be unattaching? Should I eat my placenta? Should I bury my placenta? Like, we don't know what to do. So this is a guide that is so simple and inexpensive and extraordinarily effective, that creates children like my two youngest children, who are really upstanding citizens. They're really good people. They really are kind, and they're not aggressive nor violent, and they
Mm.
are fully capable human beings, which is the same story as the adult children who grew up with the Pickler method 100 years ago. So we do have
Mm.
100 years of scientific data that proves that the children who are raised this way aren't going to become school shooters anytime soon.
So I have personal experience with Pickler as well, Gabrielle. My children started off. I mean, they've been home with me until quite recently. So they were, because I work from home.
Wonderful.
But then there was a little pod where Linda, the founder, she would go to Hungary all the time. She was very influenced by Emmy Pickler, and there was books that we were given to read. So I really love that methodology, like you said, of really respecting the infant, and there's this communication instead of treating them like an object or like a doll, which I think about the way previous generations and where so much trauma comes from. And so my trauma, I've worked my whole life to get over not feeling heard or seen or abandoned, right? It's in those early years. And now my children are in Waldorf schools, which I also love so
Fabulous.
much, which is, um, I didn't really think about this, Gabrielle, until I had children, about the school system, which can often be memorizing and just so many screens and sort of
Which is also
competitive.
traumatic. Yeah, it's more
Yes.
trauma. Yes, it is. Especially if you have a child that isn't particularly academic, who's more on the creative side. There's a tremendous amount of trauma going through school, not being able to keep up. And a lot of children suffer from that.
Yes. So, for any parent out there, anyone wanting to know more about the Pickler, and you mentioned a guide, how can they learn more? Especially if you're about to be a mom, right? We have a lot of moms to
Well,
be. Moms will be people who will be moms in 3 years, 5 years down the road.
I have a
What are
lovely website
Yeah,
called rethinkbaby.org, and it talks a lot about pregnancy, getting pregnant, what happens when you are pregnant, and all the way through toddlerhood. And there's a weekly,
beautiful.
or a monthly rather, newsletter, and there are a lot of articles, and then there's a lot of explanation as to what Pickler is, because you mentioned Pickler and people are like, what are you talking about, cucumbers in a jar? So there's a lot of information on the website.
Oh, beautiful. We'll put that in the show notes as well, Gabrielle. I love
Thank you.
that. Yeah, I just find your story so inspiring that you've been able to just move through this beautiful journey and get to this point in your life where there's this aliveness and this love, and you've created healthy relationships, and you're sharing your story. And the shame part, I think, is so huge, and you're creating with so much passion. Is there anything else you'd love, do you think, in your story would inspire another person, or that we didn't cover, or something else about shame, or anything
My
else?
husband is going crazy from a flight. He must have Wi-Fi connection on his particular flight that he's on. Forgive the beeps.
We'll edit this part out, Gabrielle. Can you turn it off just for the 5 minutes till we finish?
It's not working for some reason,
Okay.
but anyway, as a I
No,
think we
it's
covered
okay.
a lot, Kimberly. I think we covered a lot, and I am very grateful to you and your journey. And I'm very curious to read your books. I would love to read them. And I would just say that if anybody else is struggling with mental health issues, to reach out to me on my website. There's an email address that you can send to me, and I will try to guide you as best I can. I'm always available, and I'm always willing to help a fellow human being. I'm much more connected to women than I am men. But even if a man is struggling, I will be there. But I have a great slew of professionals in my life now that have supported me and have turned my life around. So I'm very willing to share that information with anyone who's struggling. And it's one thing to say seek help, but it's another thing to say seek the right help.
Right.
Because when you're very desperate, it's not always the first thing on your priority list is to seek help. It's usually how to get your needs met. And in that moment, we're so distorted with what those needs are. But I say, shoot me an email and I'll be able to guide you as best I can.
Gabrielle, you are so generous. Thank you so much for saying your heart, your big heart, sharing your story. I just find it very inspiring. And I appreciate you so much for coming on our show. So will you call out the name of your website one more time?
Yes, Rethink Baby.
And that's where they can also email you for mental health questions?
Yes, of course.
All right. Amazing. Well, thank you again so much. I'm just very in awe of the authenticity and the inspiration you bring. So thank you, sister, for coming on our show today.
Thank you, sister. Priestess is at work.
And thank you so much, loves, for tuning in today. We will be back Thursday, as always, for our next Q&A. Remember that on mysaluna.com, we will link to direct information on Gabrielle. You can also drop down the tab and submit questions for the Thursday shows on there. A little reminder that the new book is out, The Hidden Power of the Five Hearts. So please check it out when you get a moment and let me know what you think. So we'll be back here soon, sending you much love. Take great care. Bye-bye. Yay!
Well done. That was a wonderful interview. Thank you.
I just feel like for me, Gabrielle, that used to have so many layers, when I'm in my heart, when you just touch other people's hearts, it's like I've just immediately felt so close to you. There's none of these layers. It's amazing.
It's beautiful. That's how we should be interacting with everyone, but we have to put boundaries up to stay safe in environments that aren't conducive to heartwarming conversations. But I'm so glad that you felt that during this conversation. It's beautiful. It's very unusual.